Is it just me today?
I hope not.
Yay, more people.
Hey.
All right, so it's just three of us. Amy, at some point, I know you've asked me to take over this meeting, but like trying to figure out what to put on the agenda, I don't know how to do that.
We can
So at
figure that
some
out.
point,
Should we review this? Like, I love you hosting. I think you're a better host. But yeah, should we maybe figure out how to
in our next one-on-one, let's
kind of,
chat about this exact
yeah,
thing.
okay, let's do that.
Because
Okay,
I don't know
sounds
what
good.
to do with this thing. I feel like I'm always making the agenda 5 minutes before this meeting starts.
Okay, yeah, it helps to do it the day before for sure.
Well, like even then. Anyways, so welcome to, oh, it's 420. How fancy. Welcome to April 20th. Ahmad, you
Yes.
have a grand plan of action for deploying GitLab shell, specifically enabling GitLab SSHD tomorrow.
Yes. Tomorrow we shall roll out GitLab SHD to production. And yeah, hopefully like it goes well. Let's see, last time we did it, we had some problems. They are now resolved. So hopefully like everything gonna be fine tomorrow. And yeah, that's for GitLab SHD. I have another item which is not GitLab SHD. If you don't have any questions for GitLab
I do have at
SHD,
least one question.
sure.
Is there anything in our either the procedure or now that we've completed the readiness review, is there anything that's in the back of your mind that might be concerning or something that we want to talk about further in any way, shape, or form?
I don't think so. For what I remember that for the Canary environment, uh, it's there, but like the weight is 0, so Canary environment doesn't have any traffic. So it's just we will increase the traffic and we will proceed from there with the other zones. So I think everything should be fine.
So refresh me because I forget how far we got in our rollout procedure during attempt number 1. Was it just Canary that we sent traffic to and we noticed the problem and we started the rollback immediately?
Yeah, exactly. It was just
Okay.
Canary.
So effectively, we should know when we start enabling traffic to Canary again, whether we're suffering from another problem or not again.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Canary should tell us.
Excellent.
If you need an approval on that CR as well, Ahmad, then feel free to, once it's ready, give me a ping on the MR and I can approve that for you.
Sure, I will do this.
Awesome.
Well, that's all the questions I have related to GitLab SSHD. I know Igor just joined. I
Yeah.
wonder if Igor has any thoughts about us enabling GitLab SSHD.
Sounds good to me.
I like it.
Good, correct answer. That would have been fun if you'd had loads of concerns, Igor. Like, actually, like, no, stop.
Cool. Ahmad, let's talk about Camo proxy.
Yeah, for Camo proxy, just today we deployed it to pre-environment. So it's running, it's working, and I worked with Vlad to enhance the secrets a bit because it was not working before. So now it's working. So far so good with Camo proxy on pre. So the next step is to basically clean up the chart a bit and know where to actually put it, because currently we are putting it in the releases directory, which is not, I don't think it's not the appropriate place for it. So, but yeah, Camo proxy is working on pre, yay, and next steps, yeah, as I said, like to clean it up and to push it forward.
So Camo proxy was added to pre because it wasn't previously available, correct?
Yeah, it was not on
Like
pre
it's
before.
available in staging and production now, but pre we just effectively added it. Okay.
And we added it in Kubernetes, not in VMs, because I think in the other environments it's in VMs. Questions
Excellent.
regards Common Proxy?
Logging. Is there anything special we're doing there, or are we
We didn't tackle this yet with logging.
MVMs as a first step? Yeah.
Because I think like we are currently looking at, me and Vlad looking at metrics to also like extract metrics. So I think this is the next point we will tackle basically.
What do we do with logging currently? Anything? I don't think I've ever seen a Camel proxy log anywhere.
We do have them.
Okay.
But they're not very useful. I mean, it's also a very low traffic service. So it's like, oh, I got paged again for this thing that nobody cares about. Okay.
Great.
So take away from that, don't spend too much time on that if it's not perfect. Like we can fix that up later if needed.
So next up, Redis. So I worked with Igor to basically integrate the announce IP from host from IP from host. I don't remember the exact name, but like we added it to Omnibus and it works. We tested it on the VMs and the configuration works, the validation works, everything looks fine. So we add like I actually like added Balu and I think just Balu to the MR to basically review it to integrate it with the Omnibus.
I'm just following up on that. I just was in distribution Slack, so they've unassigned themselves per their process. So someone will pick up and assign it.
Sure.
The question though is what's the priority? And actually, when I look at the issue, I'm still not sure. So what's the priority of this issue and MR?
I mean, it's a blocker for us. So I don't know what the definitions of the priority label on Omnibus project are, but I would say not critical, but fairly high.
So like P2. So like sort of next up, I'll check the labels, but it might be worth us having our issues on the project with a priority label as well, because I think that's where they check back to sort of try and prioritize things.
I can get that added.
Awesome, thanks.
Ahmed, did you want to maybe demo some of what we've got?
Sure. Let me get to this point. I think I forgot I will demo it, so let me just clean up white space. Can you see my screen?
Increase that font size, please.
Yes. So let me get into one of the machines, GCloud 0. So what we did, basically, we built a package with the fix we did to Omnibus, and we installed it on the machine. And we updated the GitLab.rb file to basically announce IP from hostname to add it was true, because this is what we are consuming right now within the package itself. And yeah, effectively, if we run the script, scripts, reconfigure. Hopefully this works. So it's working. I think this will take a bit of time to actually finish running. So, but it's gonna run the reconfigure on the machines. Igor, just jump in, like if you feel like you want to add anything. So this will run the reconfigure on the machines, and it runs the validation. I don't really know what it does internally, but I think it will announce the host names shortly.
I could tell that I wrote parts of this because the word indeed is in there. So question while this runs. I know that this is something that we will need moving into the future for all Redis clusters, but I know moving all the clusters into Kubernetes is, we're multiple months away from getting that accomplished. In terms of reconfiguring this aspect, meaning the host name capability of our Redis clusters, are we going to try to tackle that for all clusters ahead of time, or are we just going to tackle all of this when we want to migrate an individual cluster, or I guess Redis deployment, over to Kubernetes?
I think we'll focus on this particular one for now and defer the decision as to when we want to do the rest.
I think the reason why I ask is because I feel like we're introducing a configuration disparity between our Redis deployments, but on that same token, we already have a configuration disparity because one example cluster has sentinels on differing nodes than the actual Redis service. So we've already got an awkward Redis configuration for, or some awkwardness in our Redis configurations already. So
yeah, I think just looking at it also from a risk management perspective, containing the changes that we're doing and kind of keeping it within this one category allows us to validate the whole process on this one cluster. And yeah, so I do see both sides, and I do think that having more config drift is a risk in the long term. But I don't think we need to deal with that now. I'll let future me regret that decision.
So something that I always find difficult to figure out how to prioritize is like the various changes. Like in this particular case, we need this host name change before we can consider migrating Kubernetes. And we know that we want to, at least currently, we know we want to migrate all of our clusters into Kubernetes. So at some point we need to touch all of our clusters for this particular configuration change. And I think if we were to move forward, it would be like validate this process here, like we're doing with this one particular deployment. But I think moving forward, it would be easier for everyone, especially people that are not us performing the migrations, just the reliability teams who need to manage our clusters, keep the configurations as similar as possible would be beneficial for them just in case an incident were to come about. It's hard to argue that though, because we still have Redis cache acting slightly different than any other Redis cluster. Is it Redis cache?
Yeah,
whatever one has it. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, which I guess brings me to my next potential question is there any desire to make Redis cache more in line with our current configuration for Redis before we try to migrate that to Kubernetes? Or is that just an unnecessary add-on to the procedure?
Don't know yet. We'll deal with that when the time comes. I guess I'm very much trying to push away any additional scope and be like, here's the goal we're focusing on. Let's get this one done and deal with the other stuff later. Because if we're gonna try now to cover all of those use cases, we'll never get it done ever.
Yep. So I'm thinking too far into the future is what you're telling me.
That's exactly what I'm telling you, yes.
It could be worth us just getting an issue or something to sort of help point to the fact that we haven't updated this on all the Redis instances though. And then if someone notices and has concerns, whatever, then we have an issue that could be prioritized if needed.
I think I wouldn't open an issue yet because like Igor said, this is a very forward thinking item. Like when I'm actually thinking of, off the top of my head at least, is let's say we complete the migration of this cluster, we might want to ask the team, like, what does reliability want to see out of this? Because if we're introducing a configuration disparity, it might be something they're aware of. And as long as they are okay with it, it might just be something we don't need to worry about because they understand where we are in the Kubernetes migration process and they understand where we are as a whole in terms of how Redis works in the first place. And it may just be like, make the least amount of change possible because that makes it easy for them to comprehend the changes that are occurring over the course of time anyways. I'd hate to be like, okay, we're at this step, we're going to change the host names for everything. Now you need to keep that in mind. And then we'll move on to the next cluster. That might introduce more pain, which I'd hesitate to do.
Yeah. Okay, we're done. And the script didn't crash, so that's good.
And then let me run the validation. I think it's here. It's called Redis validate.
You need to source the sample config, yes. Yeah, so this is kind of showing the successful reconfiguration. I mean, I think it was already in this state before we ran reconfigure. But just to kind of show what the result looks like, we have everything migrated over to host names and all of the Redis and Sentinel instances have the config that we want.
So now we have Redis running with the host names instead of IPs.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much work it takes us to make this seemingly simple change, but yeah, with like Omnibus and so many different layers of abstraction in between, it's kind of tricky.
And that's it. Questions? And questions, please, will go to Igor because he knows how to answer them.
That's great progress. How long do you think it will take to run that script on production?
You mean what do we need before we get to production?
No, I was meaning actually, like, how long will that change take to roll out across production?
As in like the change request?
Yeah.
I mean, it should basically be the same time frame as what we just saw. I don't think there's a huge difference between that and production. Maybe slightly longer, but like on the order of half an hour.
Okay. Oh, okay, great.
And 0 downtime. So, or very minimal downtime in terms of some writes being lost during a failover, which for this workload, we really don't care about. And for all other workloads, we must tolerate because, well, it's inherent to Redis's design to some extent.
Yeah.
It's async replication, right? Like you're going to lose some writes on failover. That's how that works.
But we also have at least one of our workloads doesn't support failover very well. I can't remember which one it is, whether it was the Kubernetes agent or whether it was the WebSockets deployment.
WebSockets was having issues in the past,
WebSockets.
yes.
So we've got WebSockets. I'm actually going to touch base on this in a second, but WebSockets is soon to become more important. They're trying to ramp up that feature. So we're going to want to make sure that we note this in our readiness review for this project.
Yeah, I also don't remember which Redis instance was affected by that. I think it might have been the persistent one.
Oh, okay.
So it's not super relevant to this epic per se. And I do believe there is an infradev issue, or at least there was at some point an infradev or other issue about getting action cable, which is what WebSockets uses, to be more friendly in case of Redis failovers.
So what's the next or upcoming or in progress steps for this project overall?
Yes, so we can look at the epic, and this kind of gives us a high-level view. So we're currently in parallel doing the Sentinel host names and observability stuff. And so once this is out of the way, we've unblocked hybrid deployment on pre. So that's going to be the next one.
This is excellent. Do we have an estimated timeline on when we might be able to start working on pre-prod?
Whenever this omnibus change, we complete the rollout of that omnibus change to all environments. So
Nice.
I don't know, 2 weeks-ish. Maybe that's too optimistic. We'll see.
Okay. Any other questions related to Redis? Okay. So next item is from me. WebSockets, like I mentioned, is wanting to scale up. Currently, if they try to currently there's a feature flag. This feature flag is being utilized to add real time to the labels feature set of the GitLab UI. Right now, it's not leveraging WebSockets at all, so it's not real time information when you modify an issue, but that's currently trying to get ramped up.
Which is super annoying.
Yes,
because
it is.
It means whenever the labels get updated and you don't refresh the page, if you try to add a label, it removes the other labels that were added in the meantime.
This bites me quite often. So they started to ramp up this feature flag, and then they started noticing problems with our resources. We were saturating both the memory usage as well as the number of nodes that we're running, which was surprising to me to see the nodes being saturated. But after doing some research, and Igor has done a lot more research than I have, we do have some issues that we need to work on. So currently the issue that I linked in the agenda, technically the team is waiting for someone in infrastructure to take a look and work on this. And I'm curious as to whether or not this is something, right now this is labeled as for team reliability. And this is kind of a question for you, Amy, as I wonder where the priorities should really realistically be. I think Igor, you were kind of asking a similar question as to like, when can we make this change, or when can we help out the team wanting to make any changes for our infrastructure, because they're kind of blocked waiting on the necessary changes that need to occur. I don't have an idea as to what the good solution would be, because as Igor highlighted as one of the top or first comments on this issue is that, you know, we've got quite a few options, but all require a decent amount of investigation to occur first. So Amy, I'm kind of looking forward to help from you in terms of priority as well as who should try to own this and pull this work.
Yeah, that's what I was going to start with. Like, so it's in reliability at the moment. Does it sit more closely with, like, is reliability expected to work on this? Are they going to work on this, or does this sit more closely with, I guess, some of our Kubernetes kind of resource usage type of issues?
I think, and this is my opinion, I think it belongs in reliability, and I think delivery could provide as much support as necessary, which, you know, so far, you know, I did very minor investigation into this. I haven't really done much. I'm just worried about this team continuing to be blocked, and, you know, they're trying to actively work on this feature flag, and I don't think reliability has current capacity to work on this now, which may be problematic.
Well, we certainly don't have excessive capacity in delivery either, but let me chat with Anthony about priorities for this, and figure out where this, like, what the urgency is and where, like, what gets descoped if needed, or where this fits. So what I don't want to accidentally push too far down the road is the work that we need to do to recreate clusters. And I think that's the sort of thing that we don't have solidly locked onto our roadmap, but we should have. So that's the sort of thing I'll be prioritizing this against. But let me follow up with Anthony and see which team this can sit with. I generally am assuming that if something is in reliability will own it. So if we open an issue and we're kind of thinking, probably we should do some work on this, let's put it in one of our team's issue trackers and move it if needed. And if we pass that into reliability, like, I think once someone's engaged on it, I'm hoping that means they're prioritizing it, but I can follow up.
Yeah, this is the type of issue where, depending on the direction that we go, we could either spend an hour working on this, or we could spend a week. And that's kind of an unfortunate situation depending on the direction that we go. I'm kind of leaning towards one of the items that Igor highlighted was introducing a different node pool instance type rather. And that's going to require a little bit more juggling, which would extend the time it takes to resolve this problem prior to the team being able to ramp up the feature flag again. So, and I think that would be the preferred option from my standpoint, just because I know that we are getting close to saturating the amount of nodes that we could run in a cluster. Which, unless anyone has any further questions, is a good segue into my next item.
Well, I was going to just add a comment, like, Skybet, would you mind just adding a comment with your preferred option and just saying, like, you know, based on that, this would be our recommendation for the options.
I could do that, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Igor, were you gonna say something?
No.
So this is a good segue. So bullet point number 9, Graham was taking over the capacity planning for our saturating the amount of nodes that we run for our Git and API workloads. So we've already identified that there's a few different routes that we could have gone, and we decided to go the short route initially. So we just expanded how many nodes we allow to run per cluster for those two workloads. So instead of, I think it's 50 and 60, it's now 55 and 65, if I recall correctly. But my concern is that this is a
That's
problem
per
primarily
zone, right?
per zone, yes. My concern with this change is that we now enable ourselves to get closer to saturating the amount of nodes available to run in a given cluster. We increased it by roughly, was it, I can't do the math that quickly in my head. But with WebSockets also coming down with requiring potentially more nodes, I think we're going to hit saturation in the network space faster, which has
So
me
this is
rolling.
IP addresses, right?
Correct. Because we're
Okay.
limited to 254 possible nodes on our zonal clusters.
Yeah.
So the ability to rebuild clusters is kind of like being pushed up in priority by the changes that are occurring here.
Right.
We can mitigate that by using larger nodes overall, which
Right.
pushes more pods into our node pools. But that's not a quick change.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like it might be easier to do, like more short term than rebuilding the clusters. So a band-aid to buy us more time to do the rebuilds.
I would agree. And hypothetically, that should, I'm not going to say that's going to reduce costs by doing that kind of method, but that theoretically would reduce the amount of components that are running, which would reduce costs in other locations. So like the amount of logs that we generate because we have fewer nodes, the amount of metrics that we're maintaining because again, there's fewer nodes, so there's fewer metrics overall. And I know those are very costly. You know, Prometheus has a historical, has historically been falling over for the past like half a year and change. So Amy, again, I'm seeking advice on.
I'm going to put this back to you, Skabak. So let's go through this tomorrow in one-to-one, but what I would like to see is some projects around this. So one around the cluster recreation. I know we have a few issues around various pieces. I know we have slight differing opinions. I would love to see an automated cluster recreation because that gets us closer to blue-green deployments, but I'm fine with us going with like a manual cluster recreation as a kind of a first epic. But maybe let's get that set up and have the issues in there around what are the pieces we need to do so we can prioritize that. And then maybe alongside that, we can review, do we have a separate epic which actually has the pieces of what do we need to do to increase the node size? And if we need to, we can pull that one in. We can start to actually prioritize those. But at the moment, I think there's a lot of issues, but it feels big enough and important enough for us to have an epic and actually have some sort of longer term goals versus just how do we patch it up for today, but how do we patch it up for today and also set ourselves up for sort of later in the year as well.
I guess one thing I want to just bring forward is that we do have an epic already where the goal here would be to try to figure out how we could more optimally run all of our Kubernetes workloads. And this doesn't necessarily clash with that idea. I think this would be more of a cost basis thing that could provide us a lot of benefits for both the cost of running our infrastructure, but also the maintenance of various aspects of our infrastructure. And I don't know how that falls in line with, obviously it sounds like it's lower priority than the ability to quickly rebuild clusters.
I mean, I'm thinking kind of in terms of what we have to deal with like right now. Like, I do think the cost stuff will come in. We should probably, once we've got these other epics ready and sort of in progress, we should start reviewing that. Like, it would be good to get that cost review on as what's the first piece? Like, how do we not have to sort of park everything for a quarter to do a wholehearted thing, but other pieces that we know we could start with. But I think knowing we have to rebuild a cluster to fix this IP stuff would be certainly good to know we can do that so that we don't get caught out.
That makes sense. Okay. All right. Like you mentioned, let's work on that at some point.
Yeah, let's run through. Let's run through the pieces tomorrow or in our next one-on-one, and figure out what bits there are, and then it's just a case of organizing them, see what we need to write up, and get them labeled so they appear in the right places.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Awesome.
All right, and that's all I wanted to ask or bring up in regards to that particular issue. So that's the end of our agenda. Does anyone else have anything fun they want to mention before we end the call? Well, I'll mention something. Steve, as a party, has been working on a very positive change to Kubernetes workloads. It was recently discovered that GitLab Workhorse was not shutting down cleanly. This was something that I knew for a long time, but I never investigated it. I think Igor, maybe you highlighted this in our last meeting. Oh no, you highlighted this in one of the scalability demos. Igor, if you could find that demo and drop it into our agenda, because that showcase was awesome. But effectively, we found out how to make Workhorse shut down cleanly. And this is serving out to be very nice in terms of what we respond with to our customers that ask for, that make a request to Workhorse. We're actually not failing, which is wonderful. So I greatly appreciate that. And that's slowly being rolled out into production today, which I'm super excited about. So big thanks to both Igor and Steve for rocking that out.
Very nice.
Steve did all the hard work on that.
So if anyone wants to watch that scalability demo, I highly encourage it because it was fascinating to learn about. Cool. And with that, I think we're good. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks very much. Take care.